My name is Johnny and I had been unemployed for months. Bills were piling up, and desperation was setting in. That's when I stumbled upon a job listing. Night security guard wanted, high pay, no experience required. It sounded too good to be true, but I had no other options. I sent in my CV and, to my surprise, got an interview the very next day. The office was small, tucked between two abandoned buildings. Inside, a sharply dressed man greeted me, with an unsettlingly perfect smile. "Johnny, right? Please, take a seat." The interview started normally, questions about my past jobs, my ability to stay awake during night shifts, but then, the man's questions got strange. "Have you ever worked with the dead before? Do you believe in things that cannot be seen? If you heard someone whisper your name in an empty room, would you answer?" Johnny laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of joke. The man didn't laugh. He simply nodded, scribbled something down, and stood up. "Welcome to the team." 2 days later, Johnny arrived at the cemetery at 9:45 p.m. It was larger than he expected, stretching far beyond what his flashlight could reveal. Inside the security cabin, I found a uniform, a radio, and a steaming cup of coffee someone had left for me. But what caught my attention was an old, crumpled paper lying on the desk. The title read, "Rules for the Night Shift." Rule number 1, do not leave the cabin between 1:13 a.m. and 1:27 a.m. No matter what you hear. No matter who calls for help. Rule number 2, if you hear whispers coming from the west side of the cemetery, close your eyes and count to 10. Do not acknowledge them. Rule number 3, at exactly 2:45 a.m., a woman in a black dress may appear at the gate. She will ask for directions. Do not answer her. If she doesn't leave within 5 minutes, hide under the desk and hold your breath. Rule number 4, if the radio crackles but no one speaks, turn it off immediately. Something is trying to listen. Rule number 5, by 4 a.m., check the grave numbered 317. If it is open, leave the cemetery and do not return. Your shift is over. Rule number 6 and also the last rule, if at any point you feel like you're being watched, do not look behind you. I chuckled. Someone must have made this up as a prank. But as the night dragged on, the rules stopped feeling like a joke. The night in the cemetery was eerily quiet. The dim moonlight filtered through the rows of ancient trees, casting shadows of crooked tombstones on the cold ground. I began my night patrol. The flashlight in my hand cast a faint light, dispelling the pitch-black night. My footsteps echoed in the quiet space, blending with the sound of the wind whistling through the treetops, creating a creepy melody. I walked past the graves, each one a story, a life that had ended. There were old, moss-covered graves, and newly built graves, with fresh flowers still fragrant. I stopped in front of a small grave, on which was carved the name of a child. My heart ached. I continued walking, my eyes never leaving the shadows lurking in the cemetery. Suddenly, a strange noise came from behind. I was startled, turned around, and shined my flashlight towards the sound. A stray cat ran past, disappearing into the darkness. I breathed a sigh of relief. After walking around the cemetery, I returned to the security room. The small room, with its yellow light, was my safe haven in the dark night. I sat down, took a sip of hot coffee, my heart still filled with the images and sounds of tonight. During these free moments, I took out my phone to play a few games. Time passed without me noticing. I glanced at the clock. It was now 1:15 a.m. At 1:15 a.m., I heard it, a soft, desperate voice outside. "Help me. Please." My fingers tightened around my radio. My heart pounded. The rule. I suddenly remember rule number 1. Do not leave the cabin between 1:13 a.m. and 1:27 a.m. The voice grew more frantic. "A child, maybe? Please. It's so cold." I shut my eyes and covered my ears. It's a trick. I had to wait. Then, the handle of the cabin door rattled. My breath hitched. But just as suddenly as it started, the rattling stopped. I waited until 1:28 a.m. before daring to look. The graveyard was silent again. Empty. By now, I was truly shocked by what I had witnessed in the past few hours. One thing was certain, I had to follow the rules because they were my only hope of surviving the night. At 2:45 a.m., my stomach dropped. A woman in a black dress stood at the cemetery gate. Rule number 3, at exactly 2:45 a.m., a woman in a black dress may appear at the gate. She will ask for directions. Do not answer her. If she doesn't leave within 5 minutes, hide under the desk and hold your breath. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. I gritted my teeth, gripping the arms of my chair so hard his knuckles turned white. Do not answer her. Do not even look too long. Seconds crawled by like hours. Then, she started walking toward the cabin. I dove under the desk, my breath shallow. 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. I thought to myself. Her footsteps were slow, deliberate. She circled the cabin, her shadow stretching across the walls as if she were 10 feet tall. And then, tap, tap, tap. She knocked on the glass. I clenched my fists, nails digging into his palms. Just 5 minutes. Tap, tap, tap. Then, silence. When he finally looked, she was gone. By 4 a.m., I was exhausted. But I had one last rule to check. Rule number 5, by 4 a.m., check the grave numbered 317. If it is open, leave the cemetery and do not return. Your shift is over. I found grave 317 near the back of the cemetery. My hands trembled as I shone my flashlight over it. My stomach turned. The soil was freshly dug up. The coffin was open, and inside, it was empty. My radio crackled. A voice whispered, "You were supposed to stay." I ran. I bolted from the cemetery, leaving behind the uniform, the cabin, everything. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. The sun was rising when I finally stopped shaking. I had survived. At sunrise, I drove straight to the police station. I explained everything, the voices, the woman, the open grave. The officers exchanged glances. Then one of them sighed. "Sir," I said carefully, "there's no cemetery there." I froze. They drove me back to the location. Where the iron gates should have been, there was only an empty lot. No tombstones. No security cabin. Nothing. Panic clotted my chest. I pulled out my phone, desperate to find the job listing. I clicked the link. My hands went cold. The job never existed. The graveyard never existed. But I knew what I saw. And somewhere, deep underground, something knew him. Something knew him, too.